right, what's going on, you guys? Nick here with Nick Strength and Power, and in this video we're going to be discussing Phil Heath, I think, essentially confirms he's not done yet. So it started out in the comment section of Hunter Labrada's Instagram post, a comment that Phil left congratulating Hunter on the victory. He says, "Congrats, did the work and punched your ticket again to the Olympia." Now if you scroll down to the replies and mentions of that post, Phil Heath responds to a fan's comment, and he says he's always fanning the flames of these warriors. I'm a fan of them all, to be honest. And that very last part, he says, "Oh, and yes, I am prepping for something, just not what people are guessing." So Phil confirms essentially in this comment that he's in prep. I'm assuming that he's referring to a bodybuilding show, and I'm also going to assume that when he says not what people are guessing, he's referring to the Olympia. Because if you look back for a pretty significant portion of Phil's career, he was an Olympia-only guy. He focused exclusively on the Olympia for several years because that was his bread and butter. I mean, he was Mr. Olympia, and that's the title he wanted to win year after year. And we haven't seen him really do another show in a while, a show outside of the Olympia, that is. I want to say it's been something like 5 years since we've seen Phil do a show that wasn't the Olympia. And of course, right off the bat, we know that Phil has won multiple Olympias, 7 Olympias, and once you've won an Olympia, you're qualified for life. For those that don't know, meaning he's qualified for the Olympia this year. He does not need to compete in anything else to qualify. So there was the rumor and the speculation that he might jump into Tampa Pro. And again, I really just don't see what his motivation would be for that. Because really all that would accomplish is likely Phil would win the Tampa Pro, but he would take away the qualification opportunity from somebody else in doing so. And it seems like Phil really has changed. I mean, I see him leaving supportive comments. I even talked to Phil during the Tampa Pro, and he was like enjoying the show like a fan. He's a fan of these guys, like he says in that comment on Hunter's post. And he's being supportive, and he's commenting positive things on these up-and-coming bodybuilders' posts. So I don't see any reason why Phil would do a show that would take away a qualification from somebody else other than the Arnold Classic in September. I've said it before. That's the show I would like to see Phil do. Just personally, it's one of my favorite shows, probably my favorite show. It's a title that Phil has never won. Phil has never won the Arnold Classic Ohio, although he has come very close. And we have not seen Phil Heath in an Arnold Classic Ohio lineup in over a decade now, I guess. And if I'm being completely honest, I find myself rooting for Phil. I mean, you don't want to see... Phil is one of the greatest of all time. Objectively speaking, 7-time Mr. Olympia. He's one Olympia away from tying the record. He has not formally announced his retirement. His last placing, obviously, 3rd place at last year's Olympia, which I would say to a lot of people was an unexpected placing. I'm sure to Phil as well, it was unexpected. If I'm Phil, I don't just want to wait a couple of years not competing and then a couple of years down the line say, yeah, by the way, I'm retired. I want to go out on a win. And also if I'm Phil, I don't want that win to be some random show like Tampa or the Texas Pro or whatever shows happen to be left before the Olympia. I don't think that would be something he would do. Now, there's also the Arnold Classic UK. I guess that's a possibility as well. And then there's also Athleticon. Athleticon got pushed to 2022. But to me, you know, the big thing for me is a lot of the updates that Phil's been posting. Like I've said before, traditionally, he's not that revealing when it comes to physique updates leading up to a show or even in the off season. And typically, bodybuilders just aren't that lean in the off season. As lean as Phil is, it looks like he's prepping for something. He confirmed that he's prepping for something. He's looking like he's in shape now, getting ready for a show in the near future. Athleticon, I believe, isn't until the spring of 2022. So that's quite a ways off. Now, the Arnold Classic UK and the Arnold Classic Ohio, they're both pretty much right around the corner in the fall. He would look pretty on track for one of those two shows. And the fact that in his comment he says, I'm prepping for something, just not what people are expecting, I really think that's referring to the Olympia, because we're so used to seeing Phil on the Olympia stage and the Olympia stage only. It'd almost be weird for him not to do it. Now, on the other side of that coin, I suppose there's also the possibility that when Phil says he's prepping for something, just not what people are guessing, he could be saying that he's not prepping for a bodybuilding show at all, and he could be prepping for a photo shoot, a movie role, a documentary. He's with Danny Garcia's production company now. So I guess on the other side of that coin, he could be saying, I'm prepping for something that has nothing to do with competitive bodybuilding or the IFBB. It could be something completely different. I know that he's expressed interest in wanting to get into acting, so that could be something. But I don't know. Like I said, I find myself now rooting for Phil because honestly, it was never that I wasn't a fan of Phil. I even told Phil that when we talked and we kind of squashed whatever beef we had. It was always still coming from a fan's perspective. I never didn't like Phil as a bodybuilder. Maybe when we had our little issues, I probably didn't like him as much as a person, but I never didn't like him or didn't respect him as a bodybuilder. I've always respected him as a bodybuilder. The midsection thing, I think most people criticize that because they wanted him to fix it. Most people criticize that because Phil, without the midsection issue, is almost unstoppable. And I think that's why most people continued to point that out, is because people wanted to see Phil improve upon that and get rid of that and come back to like the 2011, 2010 version of Phil. It was never, we're saying this because we don't like you. We're saying this because we think you're better than that. So I think, like, in retrospect, looking back at all that stuff, and how, you know, when Phil would win the Olympia or lose the Olympia, and the whole midsection thing was the whole story. Or looking back, I guess it was like 3 or 4 years now, people still DM me about the whole Phil threatening to sue me thing. People still bring that up to this day. And at the time, I barely had any subscribers. I was like brand new to like popping off on my YouTube channel. It was like really early on, and people still bring it up. That's still a huge part of the channel. But the point is, looking back in retrospect at Phil's legacy and everything that Phil's accomplished, he's one of the greatest of all time. And what I want to see as a bodybuilding fan, which is what I am, I want to see Phil go out on a really high note. I want to see Phil have a victory and go out with a retirement speech and say, this is, in my mind, this is just me wishful thinking, the Arnold Classic. Again, a major title, the second biggest title in bodybuilding, hands down. A title that eluded Phil his whole career. He never won that title. If Phil were to go out winning the Arnold Classic US and announced his retirement there, I don't think there would be a single person disappointed with that decision or unhappy with that decision. Again, if he deserved the victory, of course. But I think everybody would be happy for Phil with that victory, and they would be excited to see Phil going out on such a high note. Again, it's weird to talk about Phil like that because for so many years as a fan, we're used to seeing Phil just win and win and win. And the conversation is always, can Phil be stopped? Or was always, can Phil be stopped? And for now to be talking about a Phil that's now in his 40s and his placing has gone down since the last placing, second to Sean Roden and then third this year, to be talking about potentially a declining version of Phil Heath is almost sad. As a bodybuilding fan, like I talked about in the Rolly Winkler video yesterday, as a bodybuilding fan, it feels like an era is coming to an end. So if that is true, and these bodybuilders from the era that we're familiar with are aging out or they're on a decline, would we really want to see Phil go from second to third to maybe fifth or sixth if he did the Olympia this year and that trend continued and he went down another placing or two? Or would we want to see Phil go out with a major win like the Arnold Classic? And which is something that is a very realistic possibility, by the way, because right now, as far as we know, Brandon Curry and Big Ramy, the two guys that placed ahead of Phil at the Olympia, neither of them are doing the Arnold Classic. So even though it might seem like Phil is on the decline, he's still top 3 in the world at the Olympia, and winning the Arnold Classic is a very realistic possibility. And again, this is all just hypothetical, random theories. There's no confirmation at all that Phil is doing the Arnold. But in my mind, that's the scenario that I've created. So I guess let me know in the comment section below, what are your predictions for what's next for Phil Heath? What is he prepping for? What is he referring to in that comment? What show do you think he might do? What show would you like to see Phil do? And give this video a thumbs up if you would like to see Phil compete at least one more time. If you don't want Phil to be done, thumbs up this video and let him know that in the comment section down below. As always, subscribe to the channel if you have not subscribed already. I love you guys. I appreciate you guys. Nick Strength and Power signing out.